Hi, Brian here. Happy New Year, and thanks to all the new subscribers to the channel, much appreciated. So yeah, here we are. We're looking at parts of an Iron Maiden Aces High Mark II Spitfire. This is a build I'm doing for a very good friend of mine who's been a close ally and a great help in the past few years to me and my family. And I decided to buy this kit and build it up for him. So here we see the Eddie all painted up with some washes, acrylic paints, all done by hand, and then we move on to the Spitfire itself. This Revel kit is comprehensive. It's 1:32 scale with many fine details and small parts. The cockpit area is fully detailed and painted, and all the dials are put in by decal. You won't really see this on the build, but I had to do it, and slowly but surely we put the plane together. Quite easy to do, large pieces. Basically the Spitfire came together in its full shape and size within a day, and what I've started to do is to paint up some of the smaller parts prior to gluing them to the underside. You can see some of the sky colour on the detail there, and that's the undercarriage. So the board that it's going on was an old university project I had, and it was basically sand and sea that I had created. I felt this board would be wide enough to take the plane and the Eddie. So what I done was cut it down to size and eventually prepare it to have grass put on it to give them some sort of diorama to display this model. And you can see here that it's a good size. The wingspan on it is maybe 35 centimetres. The Spitfire is now ready to paint. I've protected the cockpit with some masking tape and some sponge, and this is the airbrush compressor that I bought specifically for this job. Here is the compressor, an Intertech GS Power 1-6 horsepower, flow 20 to 23 L-min. Yeah, you can read that technical jargon there. This is it here. Quite easy. Just undo this, pop that up, turn up the pressure, push it back down, tighten it up. That will then increase the pressure. Quite straightforward. Just gently hand tighten this on here. This end goes on the airbrush. This airbrush setup came with 3 needles, a gravity feed, and one of those little jars that go on the side. Being a newcomer to airbrushing, and this was the very first time I've ever airbrushed, I decided to try and get the best kit I could without blowing too much cash on it. I used Tamiya thinners and Tamiya paints where I could throughout on this build. I tried some Vallejo that shouldn't really have been used in an airbrush and did have issues later, but this Tamiya Flat Black XF1 helped me give these panel lines a nice spray. I mean, it looks a bit of a mess when you've got all those black lines squiggled everywhere, and I had to take faith in that it would work out. So here we can see that the underside of the plane, one sprayed with the sky blue, actually showed lines, panel lines coming through. This is the top part of the aircraft done. These look quite good, the panel lines, but unfortunately once all the paint was put on top, it didn't really show through as well. It's something I had to use panel line wash for later. But here we can see me doing my very first kind of approach at spraying on camouflage pattern, working in the brown on the wings. I noticed at times that you would get little splatters and little kind of spider legs coming out, and I had to actually just use the airbrush blowing air to kind of dry that out, then go over it again with paint and hope that it would cover it up. In most cases it did. So that's why you hear the airbrush on all the time, but not necessarily paint coming out. So there we go, my very first airbrushing attempt. Yeah, I was quite happy with it. A little bit of bleed between the colours, between the dark green and the flat earth brown. But I felt that it worked out and it was starting to come together. And having not built a Spitfire in 30 years, 40 years, I felt this was probably going to work out to be one of my better ones. Here on the underside of the plane we can see those black lines for the panel lines, and this is me basically taking a sky blue that's a Tamiya colour and spraying that in, making sure that the area gets covered but not completely, and then there's a sense of depth and shape and manufacturing of panels, as it were, being placed together. So very gently I'm just layering over small parts, working between the lines, just over the lines, and to create a nice blown effect on the underside of the Spitfire. Yeah, as I said, you can see here, those panel lines show through just about, adding a nice detail, which will eventually be weathered. I saw a fellow YouTuber use this technique, long strands of blue tack placed over the areas that were going to be demarcated for the camouflage between the green and the brown. So I set about putting a load of blue tack all over the plane, and here you can see it all painted up, and basically the demarcation lines, the separation between the flat earth brown and the dark green should be a lot more precise and offer a better effect. So here we see me stripping off all the blue tack and revealing the areas that I've got a little bit of bleed through them, but otherwise 80% of it worked out very well, and it's a technique I will use in future. I built this over the festive period of 2021 while suffering a bad flu, so 2 or 3 weeks of feeling poorly certainly were a welcome distraction building this aircraft and learning how to airbrush for the first time. You can see here that the lines separating the green and the brown are a lot clearer, a lot sharper. Certainly far happier with how this turned out, and it's a better representation of how the Spitfire would really look. Now it was time to put the decals on. There's many decals for this aircraft, and there's many that go underneath the wing. A lot of these won't be seen in the diorama, but again, it had to be done in order to give an element of realism. I had an issue with the roundels. I did have decal softener. I had never used it before. I maybe didn't apply enough or leave it long enough in order for it to mould into the shape. But here we can see I've used the decal softener, and it's definitely taken the shape of the body and the panel lines far better, especially the larger roundel. I think you'll agree, the graphics and the decals on this plane look amazing. They really stand out, especially the smaller details round about the cockpit. Underneath the aircraft I started adding some panel line accent wash in order to show off the panel lines and add some weathering detail to it, as I did on the top of the aircraft. You can also see the machine gun smoke across the wings as well. A lot of the streaking and weathering, especially from the exhaust tips, were done specifically to show off the plane flying in motion, as it were. This is my selection of Warworld scenic static grasses in various lengths and various colours to create a flat runway grassy field for the Spitfire diorama. The WWS Progress applicator is excellent for this sort of job, and I've used it in numerous jobs up until now, so very happy with it. And here we are on to building the actual brackets for this diorama. I had some wood lying around. I'm not the best woodworker in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but I threw some brackets together to support this diorama in order to put it on the wall of his living room. Didn't have a great success with using this texture spray paint. It did run and it didn't cover fully where I hoped, so I ended up I had to mask off the base of the diorama board and repaint those brackets, get them up to par, because the guy's going to be displaying it in his living room, so I couldn't have it looking too shoddy. And there we go, black painted brackets. That should look okay on his living room wall. Thankfully there's no direct light underneath it, so it won't highlight my shoddy work. But yeah, here we go, starting to work on the diorama itself. A nice area of PVA glue covers the entire board. Then I built it up slowly using fine scatters of various colours, fine leaf foliage, some dark earth and some sand as well. And slowly but surely built up the tones and the textures. Again, it's a runway, so it needs to be flat and smooth for these things to take off and land safely. Yeah, I think I achieved the right effect here. Some various tones and colours, various greens and browns and oranges in there. Nice effect. Thanks for sticking with this video upload on the Angelshare Model Railways. It's not my usual fare, but again it's related to my progress as a modeller, and every job that I do modelling wise gives me a better skill set in order to produce some better model railways really. That's what the main aim is of this. So thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing and commenting. Take care everyone, all the very best for 2022. I'll see you soon.